Hi, I'm Ashley, and today we're continuing our series on color theory. So this is video 2 on color theory out of, I don't know, maybe 5, 6. I haven't decided exactly how many I'm going to do yet, but we'll see. So make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of the videos in this series, and you can hit the notification bell as well so that you get notified when they come out. So this video, we're going to delve into the topics of color temperature and then touch on color intensity, and so muted versus vibrant colors, and very, very minimally touch on value. We'll get into that a little bit later in the series more, but this is going to really dive into color temperature. So if you've heard about warm and cool colors, but you're not really sure what that means or kind of how to identify them or break them down, this video is for you. And also at any point, if you have questions or comments or your own insights or kind of views on anything that we're talking about, please put it down in the comments and we can start a conversation there. I do reply to all the comments that I get, so I will jump into conversation with you there. So let's go ahead and flow right in. So my last video was all about the color wheels, comparing and contrasting the traditional red, blue, yellow color wheel with the more modern cyan, yellow, and magenta color wheel, and looking at kind of the properties of them and why they work and what are some limitations of each. So today we're going to look at color temperature and kind of what that theory means and kind of dive into it so that we have a common language between us artists. So in this sketchbook, I have a whole bunch of color wheels already. So I'm just gonna show you these and then we'll play with them a little bit to actually paint and look at how we're creating these different colors. Okay, so these are 2 different color wheels, and I actually have my paints right here so you can see what they look like in the tube that I used. Okay, so this color wheel is made with this yellow, which is kind of an orangey yellow, ultramarine blue, and then pyrrole scarlet, which again is kind of an orangey red. This color wheel is made with pink, yellow, which is a more kind of traditional neutral yellow, not so orangey, and then phthalo blue-green shade, which is considered a cyan. So this is the traditional cyan, magenta, and yellow. Not traditional, but the more modern cyan, yellow, and magenta color wheel. And then, so if we look at the difference between these 2 color wheels, obviously they are not the same, right? We still have kind of a blue, we still have kind of a yellow, and we still have kind of a red or pink, but they're completely different. And that comes down to color temperature, okay? So color temperature is a theory. It is not a fact. So color is kind of a complex subject where it doesn't have precise, distinct answers, and everybody sees color differently. Our eyes are all made different, and we can actually perceive things differently. But there are some common terms and theories that we use so that we can all be on the same page about it, even though it may not be exactly correct, again, because it's a theory, it's complex. But this way we can all have a common language around it. So the first time that I can at least find documented where color temperature is talked about is actually a watercolor and botanical artist. So that's kind of cool. Her name was Mary Gartside, and it was in 1805. And she was kind of the first one to talk about warm and cool colors, and she divided them based on Sir Isaac Newton color circles. And so he had like prismatic color circles. Sir Isaac Newton was really kind of the first to break down light and look at it in a very scientific fashion and figured out the prism and stuff like that. But Mary, keep forgetting her last name, but we'll just call her Mary. Mary in 1805 looked at that a different way and started describing color temperatures. In 1810, so really quickly after that, Johann, I can't pronounce the last name, but maybe Goethe, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but he is actually a poet, and he described color also looking at color temperatures and kind of the emotional basis behind colors. So that's kind of where the historically talked about warm and cool colors started. So if we look at a color wheel, in theory, orange is the warmest color. So no matter which direction you go from orange, it is going to be cooler because it's going toward the opposite of that, which is blue. Blue is the coolest color, okay? So no matter which direction you go from blue, it's warmer. Because if you add yellow to blue, yellow is a warmer color than blue. It's associated with sunshine, right? It's associated with fire, though we all know fire comes in all the different colors depending what you're burning. But when we break it down, orange is considered the warmest color, blue is considered the coolest color. Okay, so if you want to have a warmer painting, you're going to stick on the warm side of the color wheel. Okay, so if we divide it right in half, you're gonna have your bright greens, your yellows, your oranges, your bright pinks. Those are warmer. And then your purples and your blues and your greens are cooler. So relative to each other, you have a warm half and a cool half. Now, could you make that delineation here instead? Sure. Could you make it here instead? Sure. Because again, this color is warmer than this color. It's closer to orange. So where you make that line is going to depend on your personal preference. But in general, you can cut the color wheel in half. And so if you look at more like these colored donuts that I have, that's what I'm calling them. But you can do the same thing. So let's take this one here. I'm gonna say my orange is the warmest, that's right here. Blue's the coolest, so I'm just gonna cut it in half right there. So this is the warm side, this is the cool side, okay? But as you move away from blue, we're getting warmer and warmer each direction. As you move away from orange, we're getting cooler and cooler each direction. So green is cooler than orange, okay? And pink and purple are warmer than blue. So that's one way that you can look at cool and warm, okay? You can also look at individual colors, okay? So we still need to remember, I mentioned this in my last video, but color is a spectrum. It is not something that can be divided like 1, 2, 3, like integers. It's a spectrum. It has infinite possibilities. The hues change super subtly. Our eye can perceive up to 10 million different hues for a normal human. Some humans have extra receptors and they can see up to 100 million. We don't have names for them all, okay? But it's a spectrum. But we're gonna look at the color wheels, which are divided just into 12 different colors, just for simplicity's sake. Okay, so now let's look at this, okay? So let's take purple, for example. Our purple can be a cool purple, which leans toward blue, or a warm purple, which leans toward pink, or going the direction of orange on the color wheel, right? So purple can be warm or cool. Okay, same with green. We can have a warm green, we can have a cool green. Yellow, we can have a warm yellow, like the case of this Hansa Yellow Light. It's a little bit more orangey. Or we can have a cooler yellow, like a lemon yellow, which I don't have here, but I do have swatches. We can have a cooler yellow that's a little bit more greeny, okay? Now, again, color is subjective. It is not something that we all perceive the same. So somebody might say that this is orange, but somebody else might say that it's warm yellow. Both are right. Somebody could say it's green. It's like highlighter. Some people call that highlighter yellow. Yellow, some people call it green. Well, both people are right. It's just how it's perceived, okay? But it's a cool yellow because it is a more greenish yellow, okay? Same with red. We can have a cooler red that goes toward purple, or we can have a warmer red that goes toward orange, okay? So I have a whole bunch of different reds. Right? We have this red, which is more orangey. We have this red that's even more orangey. This is red still, but it's a little bit more purpley, okay? So the only time this gets confusing is orange. I literally have never heard anyone talk about warm or cool orange, okay? Remember, it's the warmest color. So I don't know, call it what you want. I've never heard anyone talk about it. There are some people that say that a warm color leans toward red and a cool color leans toward blue. So in that case, then I guess a more reddish orange would be considered warm. But to me, that doesn't really check, because warm and cool should be opposite and blue and red aren't opposite, right? So again, not commonly talked about. So I wouldn't worry about orange. But blue is confusing because, again, blue, whenever you're adding any color, whether it be taking it toward the green or taking it toward the pink, you're moving closer to orange. But we do describe blue as warm and cool, and it's based on that red theory, okay, or the pink theory. So if it's going toward pink, it's considered a warm blue, or toward red. And if it's going toward yellow or toward green, it's considered a cool blue. So just for the sake of, again, a consistent language, even though to me it doesn't make sense because both are warmer and that's where it gets confusing. But for the sake of a consistent language, think toward red for the blue. If it goes toward pink or red, it's a warm blue. Okay, so a purpley blue is going to be a warm blue, and a greenish blue is going to be a cool blue. So here we have this, which is like a greenish blue, that's cooler. And then this direction with it being purpley is warmer. Okay, so you can take whatever color you want and do swatches like this. So I'm gonna get out my palette. This is my palette that I use on a regular basis. These are Winsor & Newton paints versus these ones, which I made the color wheels with, which are Daniel Smith. Both are excellent paints. The Daniel Smith split primary set is a great starter set, just side note, because it gives you all the colors that you need to then mix. Okay, I don't know why I have so many pencils laying around. Okay, so I'm gonna take this palette, I'm gonna stack up these ones, get them out of the way. And then I'm just gonna choose a color, okay? So I'm gonna take some cleaner water, and we're going to take a purple here, okay? So this purple is Winsor Violet. Okay, so if I take Winsor Violet, that is purple, okay? Now, if I add some pink to it, this is Permanent Rose, I can get a warmer purple because it's moving toward, from this purple, I'll use this example, from purple toward orange, okay? I'm adding that pink to it, okay? And it's warmer. And I can add even more pink and make it even warmer, okay? Until I get all the way to just straight pink if I wanted to, okay? And then I can make it cooler. So I'm just gonna add some cobalt blue to it because that's what's drawing my eye right now, okay? So I'm gonna add some cobalt blue to my Winsor Violet, and then it becomes a cooler purple, okay? Until we would get all the way to blue. So that's one way to shift color temperatures, okay? Is just add the color that's next to it on the color wheel. And you can choose whichever colors you want and you can play with it. So, you know, if I look at a yellow, so this is lemon yellow, okay, I can do the same thing. My lemon yellow is very dirty though. So that's lemon yellow. And if I take a tiny bit of blue into that, I can make it a cooler version of the yellow, okay? Whereas if I put a little bit of pink or orange into it, it becomes a warmer yellow. So you can play with that with any of your paint colors. You can also just purchase not all is an exaggeration. You can purchase many of these colors in tubes or pans if you don't feel like mixing them. So there are sets that come with 48. I mean, I don't know exactly how many, but I think Daniel Smith has like 270 colors or something that you can choose from. So it's not the 10 million that our human eye can perceive, but it's a lot, right? So you can buy pretty much any of these colors in tubes if you want. But you can mix an infinite number just by adding a little bit of color to it. Okay, so that's the basics of warm versus cool. Now we're gonna look at it and look at muted versus vibrant, because that's another way that we can shift our colors, okay? So we have talked about warm versus cool, and muted versus vibrant is another way that we can shift our colors and make them look different, okay? So if you look back, I'm gonna mop this up because I don't wanna get the other page dirty. I have hairs everywhere. Okay, so if we look at these two color wheels, this is all very vibrant colors, and these ones are muted colors, okay? So muted colors are more neutral. They're more kind of brownish, grayish colors versus vibrant, more like pure colors, okay? And the way that we can create those muted colors is by mixing complementary colors. So you have the complementary colors, which are opposite on the color wheel. Okay, so orange and blue, green and pink, or green and red, yellow and purple, okay? And then you can do the same with your secondary colors. So like a purpley blue and an orangey yellow would be complementary, okay? So the way to take your colors from vibrant to muted is to mix complementary colors. So this is where understanding which colors are warm and which ones are cool are very important, because if we look at these two color wheels, they're sort of both blue, red, and yellow, right? This is blue, pink, and yellow, but same-ish idea, but completely different results. And that's because this yellow is very warm. It's still yellow, but it's almost orange, okay? This red is, again, it's a fairly neutral red, but it's a lot warmer than the pink, okay? So if you mix a warm, which is orangey, right? It goes toward orange. If you mix a warm red that's got a lot of orange in it with a blue, you're mixing orange and blue, essentially, okay? Not exactly, but pretty close. And that's gonna create a neutral, because if I mix orange and blue, that creates gray. So I'm gonna take these colors real quick, and I'm just gonna put some orange here. Where am I gonna do this? I'm doing it right here. I'm gonna put some orange, and I'm gonna put some blue, okay? And this is orange and blue mixed because I had orange on my paintbrush still, so I'm just gonna mix those instead. Okay, orange and blue mixed. Clean out my brush, and then just get blue. Okay, this is very pale. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, but you can see when I mixed the orange and the blue, I get brown. Okay, and depending on how much of each I mix, I'm gonna get different colors. So if I mix like a greenish blue color, okay, so green and pink or red are opposites. So I've mixed that greenish blue color with a pinky color, right? And these are just mixtures that are in my palette already. And I'm just taking a little bit of them, okay? I mix those two colors and I essentially get this grayish color, right? If I add more red to it, it's gonna take it a little bit more toward brown, but I can shift it, but it's neutral, right? This is gray, this is brown, okay? Grays usually have a little bit more blue in them. They're cooler than browns. Okay, so that pulls back in our warm-cool conversation. So because this is a more bluey, this is almost like mixing blue and pink, right? So I get kind of a bluish purpley undertone, but that's gray. Whereas mixing orange and a more purpley blue, a warm blue, I get more brown. Okay, so if I mix them in equal portions, I get a neutral. But if I mix them in unequal portions, I get a muted color. So there's that. And then I just add a touch of the pink to it. It's a lot less vibrant on this side as it is on this side, right? So I'm dulling it down. That's a muted color, okay? So let's take a bright red. This is my Pyrrole Scarlet, okay? And let's mute it down. So that's like an orangey red. So I need to mix in a opposite of orangey red would be a bluey green, right? So I can take some of this, which is a bluey green, and mix that in. If I do equal amounts, it's gonna turn brown, okay? Whereas if I do more red, it becomes a muted red, okay? So that is one of the best ways to pull down the vibrancy of your paintings. If you're noticing that your paintings look super bright and it becomes distracting for you, or it's not creating a focal point like you want, add a little bit of the contrasting color to some of your colors to pull down some of the vibrancy. And then you can use pops of the more vivid colors here and there to pull attention. And we'll get into using color to really balance your paintings down the road in this series. But that's where knowing your color wheels and knowing how to adjust your colors in both temperature and intensity is very important, okay? So another way that we can look at it is values, okay? So we've gone over warmth, we've gone over intensity, or, you know, making it more muted versus more vibrant. And then we can go over values. So these are all dark value. They're all very concentrated paint, very concentrated color. Whereas these are light value. In watercolor, you change the value by adding more water. So in these ones, I just had a bunch more water on my paintbrush, and that allows the white of the page to shine through, which makes the color lighter. The pigment particles are also more separated, and it's just a lighter value, lighter color, okay? So you can go from very light value to very dark value. I don't have a dark value of that color, so I'm just gonna use a different one that's similar. Okay, and the more paint you have versus water, the darker the value is going to be. Okay, more complex is getting into, well, is this mass tone, right? We call it mass tone when it's the most paint and the least water. Is this mass tone a darker value than this mass tone? You know, and that gets into a little bit more complex color theory. And one of the best ways to kind of test that and to learn that is to change your paintings to black and white. And then you can see what colors are the darkest value, because the darker value colors are going to be more toward black and the lighter values are going to be more toward white. And if everything is really dark value, it might be a boring painting, right? You turn it to black and white and it's just all one thing, or slight variations of that dark color. But so varying value is another way to develop harmony in our paintings, which we'll get into. But this kind of wraps up talking about color temperature and color vibrancy or intensity, where we can change it from a very vibrant color to a very muted color by adding the contrasting color. So just to kind of wrap it up, color temperature, if we're moving toward orange, it's warmer. If we're moving toward blue, it's cooler. okay? For blue, think about moving toward red instead. So a warm blue is going to be more purple toward red. A cool blue is going to be more green, which is, toward yellow. But you can have warm and cool variations of any color along the way. If you want to make the color less intense, less vibrant, add the contrasting color. So adding orange to blue, or even adding an orangish red to blue is going to create a muted blue color. Okay, so adding this red to this blue created this kind of grayish color. Okay, I wouldn't call that purpley blue, I'd call that gray. Okay, so you can learn about your colors by playing with them, by swatching them, by doing mixing charts. There's lots of different ways, but you want to learn about your colors, understand their temperatures, and which colors are more vibrant, which are more muted, and then you'll learn about mixing them appropriately to get the desired effects in your paintings. All right, so that wraps up our discussion on warm and cool colors and how to shift colors from warm to cool, how to shift them from higher intensity to lower intensity, and a super brief discussion on value. But the next video that we're going to do is about different color harmonies and kind of some schemes to create color harmony in our work. So you don't want to miss it. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep your paints flowing.